Welcome to The Problem, a Lockwood & Co. podcast. I'm Caitlin.
I'm Alan.
And this week we are talking about the first part of part 4, which is called Unrest. Chapters 13, 14, and 15. So strap in. Yeah. You're going to be here for a bit.
You remember on Measures of Truth, we used to do like 5 chapters at a time, sometimes more. And now it's like, there's too much to talk about with these 2 chapters. We can't move faster than this.
To be fair, I thought we were crazy on that one, on Measures of Truth. It also doesn't matter if we finish. Like, nobody's counting on us. Like, I understand that people are listening and it would be sad, I guess, maybe, or they would want more. I don't know about sad. But, like, it's not going to upset their lives.
That's the point of it, that it's not serious.
Yeah, exactly.
But my brain can't handle that. It's like, it must be taken seriously.
Now that I've put down our work and our listeners, let's get into things.
Yeah.
In Chapter 13, Lucy gets into an argument with Lockwood, is comforted by Skull, and Inspector Barnes comes to ask for help. 3 wild things.
I don't know if comforted is the right thing by Skull, but I guess we'll talk about it.
You wrote it.
Yeah, I don't know why you would say that, but well, I guess we'll see if you're right about what you said.
I just read these things. Okay, we sat to... No, now I just started reading the chapter. Wow.
We sat together, 3 of us, in the kitchen at Portland Row.
Yeah. Okay, I meant to talk about the chapter art. You know what? It's not really early anymore. Never mind. That's not an excuse. Chapter 13. It's Skull in a jar with a sock on him. And
yeah, I love it.
It's great. And there's something about the drawing of the jar this time that it just looks like an old jam jar.
It does.
You know, it doesn't look special at all. It's just like, yeah, he's a skull in a jar. We keep him around.
He's like a pickled head.
Exactly.
Yeah, there's a moment in the chapter where Lucy throws her sock at him, and I guess that's this moment.
It's great. I love it. Also, it looks like a good, cozy sock.
I thought that too.
Right? It looks like a high quality, thick sock. I appreciate it. I could never wear a thick sock like that because it feels weird in my shoes. I prefer a thin sock. It also doesn't get very cold here.
Well, it's probably good for her like work boots and stuff.
Probably. That would still bother me. I enjoy a thin sock. This is the weirdest conversation. Anyways, the crew is sitting... other than Lockwood, are sitting around in the kitchen talking about how badly hurt Lockwood is. George and Lucy are kind of reassuring themselves that, of course, he's going to be fine. And then Lucy is like, unless he's not. And she lists all the terrible things that could happen. And the note that I wrote down was, for fuck's sake, Holly.
I think Holly wants Lucy to feel bad about it.
I genuinely can't tell if right here she knows what she's doing. Like, this could just be a nervous tick, right? She could be scared too, and her version of being scared is listing off all the bad things that could be happening. Like, that's a genuine thing that happens, right?
That's true.
When people just are nervous or scared, so they start talking about worst case scenario. But because we get this from Lucy's point of view, it does sort of sound like, or Lucy, you could have caused a brain bleed.
He might be up there dying right now, Lucy. But don't worry about it. Yeah, but Holly patches him up and he's talking and like he's not in a coma or anything. He's like asking for breakfast. He seems okay.
He's fine and he doesn't seem like woozy like he has a concussion. I also, because I'm Canadian and know people who've played hockey, I know men who've gotten a concussion and haven't gone to the hospital and they've lived fine lives. I mean, they're stupid, but that was true before the concussion.
Right, yeah.
You know what? Complete side rant. Can I do a side rant? This is bothering me forever. So if you read romance books at all, there is a recent trend in romance books with the male character being a hockey player. I have never in my life met a male hockey player who wasn't a fucking asshole. So I will never read one of those books. I don't understand. There is no attraction there. Nothing. If you wanted to write about female hockey players, they are great people. Male hockey players, assholes. They also, female women's hockey, also better. They play better hockey because they're not trying to beat each other up.
Mm-hmm.
All right, sorry. Super Canadian rant over.
It's but that's like a hyper masculine, like, archetype, right? Like the hockey player.
In Canada, I don't know about outside of Canada.
I guess that's true. I guess for me, because I'm from like the Great Lakes area originally, so it's basically...
You're like South Canada.
Yeah, exactly. So like, to me, yeah, like I was on a hockey team when I was a little kid.
Yeah, so was every male I knew. Like...
I wasn't any good.
So was every male I knew. Sorry, carry on.
But like, I kind of get it. If like the fireman, the cowboy...
Well, like sports romance has always been a thing. That's fine. I just... And presumably if I'd grown up in like the southern states, I'd feel the same about a football romance. Because I'm sure all those men are assholes.
Yeah.
I've never met one, so I don't actually know. But I grew up in Canada with the hockey players, and I don't know a single person who's ever played football, honestly. Not in like a team way, you know?
Yeah.
Anyways, they suck. And you're all wrong to be romanticizing them.
It's not attractive.
Because I'm sure the people reading those romance books and the people listening to our podcast about a middle grade book are the same demographic.
It's huge crossover space.
I mean, I'm interested in both, so maybe.
Lockwood would never play hockey.
Can you imagine?
He would never play it. He'd be good at it, though.
No, he's more of a figure skater. He's like tall and thin.
That's hilarious. I think that's right. Because he does like the fantastic leap that you would need to do in figure skating to save her, and like swishes his sword through the ghost, although he face planted. That happens in figure skating too, though. Oh,
that's why I have trouble watching figure skating, because I'm always so like
when
nervous.
They wipe out.
I don't want to see it. It bothers me. I mean, I do watch a lot of figure skating because I am Canadian. This does put in mind, a fanfic writer out there should write like a Lucy and Lockwood, Scott and Tessa AU. It would be so good.
Oh, there you go.
Two people understood what I just said. Anyways, so we're back. Oh, so back in the kitchen, they're talking about, or what Holly's saying about what she has done for Lockwood and blah, blah, blah. And she mentions giving him sweet tea. And I do wonder if that is in the American one. Because I don't...
Oh, no. She said, I remember her saying that. Because I thought it was weird too. Yeah. Okay. It must be like like when people are sick in England, you give them grapes. I wonder if it's like a thing. You like put sugar in their tea to help them.
Oh, I'm sure. Energy. Yeah, that makes sense. A sugary tea makes sense as like it being... I cannot think of sickness. A word. Yeah, but like something to up your constitution, you know? Yeah. I was going to say reconstitutional, but I don't think that's English. I don't think that's a word. Anyways, so it makes sense, but just the way that she referred to it as sweet tea, that sounds very American to me.
Yeah, I had that thought too. But if anybody invented it, I feel like it would have to be the English.
Well, so here's the thing, and this is going to rock your fucking mind, Alan. At the beginning of America, all the white people were English.
I know, that's what I mean.
Right?
It's like one of those things we inherited from them. And then the English were like, we don't do that. That's American. You know, like...
Because in England, it doesn't get as hot as in the south of America.
I think they also made all the sugar in the place where sweet tea is popular.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
In America.
I do really love the idea of these old-timey English people being like, it's so hot, but I just want a cup of tea. We got to figure this out. We got to figure this out.
Like, what am I going to do?
Oh, wow. We're going to be so on topic this whole episode. Wow. Okay. We move on. They're still sort of chattering about. George does mention that Lucy should eat, and she's just like, uh-huh. But you can tell through this whole thing that Lucy is just deep in the guilt.
Yeah, she's unhappy.
Really feels like she fucked up. It's worse when somebody tells you not to do something and then you endanger them by doing that thing that they told you not to do. So, like, you fucked up and you're proven wrong and they are made right. Like, that sucks. And then, of course, Holly is just the worst. Here, like, the other one, I was like, I don't know, she might not know what she's doing there, but here where she's like, if you hadn't exposed yourself to Ghost Lock, the visitor wouldn't have revealed the whereabouts of its source, so really all our success is due to you. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah, I think that's what I was talking about. That it really feels like she's, digging in to her. She's like, you're really the one who solved it by fucking up, like hurting other people. Like, way to go.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
I guess she could just be nervous, but and then the only thing Lucy can say is thank you. Like, of course, you're right. Because otherwise, like, that's the only thing you can say to that.
Yeah, and Holly's the one who literally saved her life. So there's nothing, what can you say to her at all?
Yep.
But I think it's like what I said before, that Holly is like, resents how Lucy is always, like, she's a slob, in Holly's estimation. And then she's praised for it and rewarded. And so like, this is the exact thing that like pisses Holly off about Lucy, is what's happened. And so she's just really serving it to her, I feel like.
And then on the next page, George is kind of callous about the whole thing, but it's George, so it makes sense. Like, that George he's not thinking about trying to hurt Lucy. He's just being George. Yeah,
like he gets into the theoretical background to what happened, which is interesting to me. Like, I was pulled in by that world building where basically he's like, he does make her feel guilty, because he's like, hey, were you feeling any emotions of abandonment or neediness while you were up there? And she's like, no, I would never feel that way, George. What are you talking about? Yeah. And it seems like he does definitely know that she feels bad.
I don't know that he does here, but he does later. Because here he's just like thinking about it scientifically.
The important thing that we kind of glossed over too was that Lockwood's maneuver like made the ghost kind of like fly back to its source.
Right, yes.
And they were able to track it. Yeah, and find the source and wrap it up. So the haunting is dealt with. What I like about that is, like, we've had these other hauntings that Lucy's been involved with, and we've talked about this each time, how the ending of those hauntings has been really ambiguous, and we haven't actually known if the haunting is over. And this one, but those hauntings kind of like went really well in a certain sense, at least from Lucy's perspective. And then this haunting, I mean, it couldn't have gone worse, but it wrapped up proper, if that makes sense.
And also in the previous ones, the ghosts themselves didn't seem malicious.
Yeah.
This ghost was definitely malicious.
This guy's a little asshole. And we actually, like, don't we get his whole backstory here?
Yeah, about how he was just spoiled, but then also abandoned by everyone, either to death or choice or whatever. And so the two things combined kind of made him into a shithead.
Right. And that's maybe what appealed to, that's what he's talking about with abandonment and neediness for Lucy.
They should have put him in hockey so he could get all that aggression out.
Yeah. That always works. It doesn't make it worse.
No,
it makes it better. Yeah. And then there's like a minor argument over who's going to take Lockwood food, and Lucy just grabs it and goes.
I definitely feel like you can feel I have to get this over with.
Yeah. You know what this made me think of was, I wonder if this is on purpose. Like if they were setting something up from the show where Lockwood comes up and he's like, I'm not Anthony Lockwood. I'm a qualified doctor.
Yeah.
I felt like if in the show version of this, she would go up there and be like, I'm not Lucy Carlisle. I'm a qualified doctor.
Aww.
And
that'd
then
be
like,
so cute.
But then by the end of it, have it turn out really bad the way that this does. You know, like it goes into like a big argument, and
yep. That'd be terrible.
It would be like the inversion of the previous. I know. Wouldn't that be heartbreaking?
That'd be a good moment for a show that we don't fucking get.
Oh, no. I'm always thinking about the show. I see those kids in this in this book every time I read it. But yeah, that's what this made me think of. She goes up there and brings them some food, and to have it, like you said, to get it over with and have a talk.
Yeah. So she goes in, she apologizes, and we get this, and he says, you apologized before, and she says she wasn't sure if he'd remembered, and he says, I remember waking up with my head in someone's lap, don't know if it was yours or Holly's, And immediately Lucy says it was George's, actually. Which is great and funny, but also I do wonder if she's telling the truth.
That's really funny. I hadn't thought of that.
And if she's not telling the truth, whose lap was it?
That's really
and Lockwood is immediately put out by the idea that it was George too, and not one
He's
of the
like,
girls.
oh, should we talk about anything else now?
Yeah. So great. What a little shit he is sometimes. And then, they have their big argument, which is just the same disagreement they've been having. Yeah,
he really puts his foot down here. He's like, no more. And he's kind of got the high ground. She knows it.
And then they also immediately start arguing about Holly, which just feels like the biggest deflection, right? Like, he doesn't want to talk about why he's so worried, and she doesn't want to talk about, they don't want to talk about their feelings. So they're like, fucking Holly, or Lucy is. And then he's like, she just saved your life. And Holly's like, I know.
Yeah.
So I guess I can't be mad at her.
That's completely right. I think that it's a big deflection. And she says the thing out loud here for the first time. Like, I know full well that I owe her. I know how thoroughly perfect she is.
Yep.
And I just feel terrible for Lucy when she says that. But like, it's like you said, Lockwood is like terrified of losing Lucy. And he failed again. He failed to save his sister, like that line that lives in him. It happened again. Like Lucy can't see it that way. She only sees that she hurt him and not that he let her down. That's how he sees it.
And also, I'm sure he sees it like he didn't just fail to save her, although he did kind of save her, but he failed himself by caring.
Yes.
That he cares about Lucy. He doesn't want that. Because everybody he cares about dies.
Right. Yeah. Like, exactly. Yes. That he caused this to happen because he cares about her. Yeah. Yeah. Which is crazy. That's wrong. But,
it's a common thing in books. I genuinely don't know if it's a common thing in life because my life totally isn't terrible. Or isn't that type of terrible.
No, it's a PTSD response. It's totally
it makes sense. Well, it makes bad sense.
No, it's how your mind is just always trying to find agency. And so it's like, oh, I caused that. Like, that's normal for your brain to do.
Yes, that's what I mean. It makes bad good sense. I don't know what I'm saying.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. You have to, at some point, hopefully you can be like, oh, that's not true, but it did help me to deal with this impossible situation. Lockwood's not at that point yet, but yeah.
So they argue and they don't really get anywhere, obviously, other than saying, everything's fine, even though obviously it's not. So Lucy stomps upstairs.
Oh, 1 second before we leave that. No, there is this one moment where when they're talking about Holly and she's like, if she's so perfect, why did Rotwell throw her away?
Oh, right. Yes.
And blah, 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 blah. And this is another part of how I constructed a backstory in my head for Holly and where she is psychologically, blah, 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 blah. Because you find out that after years of perfect service and her trying her very best, even though she's not very talented, capital T talented.
Yeah.
She, has risen to the highest place that she could. She's with their top people. And then they just do the kind of shitty thing that happens in office politics where they're they shunt you to somebody that you're not compatible with. You complain about it. And then they're like, well, this is reality now and you can deal with it or you can leave. And she leaves. And so it's her career ended and she ended up getting a job with the smallest agency in London, cleaning up their laundry. And you know what I mean? What an epic fall this is for Holly. And how, to me, this is wow, the existential crisis that she must be in at 18 years old because of this situation that Lockwood kind of says here. It was big, I think, for Holly. She's in a real bad place, actually. Even though Lockwood and Co. is an awesome place and we love it as the readers, when you look at it from a career in ghost busting in London, it's a huge fall.
For Holly, yeah.
Yeah.
I do think that at this point in the story, Lockwood & Co. is a well-known, respected agency. But yeah, to go from the second, one of the two biggest agencies and the most respected to a tiny one. Yeah, that makes sense. I feel like if she'd been anywhere else, it might have been fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, because Lockwood is known. Lockwood & Co. They're known.
Yeah, she didn't go to Bun Church.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're the worst, but like
they're
she
not
went
the
to
worst. They're the smallest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it just had to be like a really hard week in her life that she's still working out.
And 18 is a great time to have an existential crisis, really. To like really dig into it and just be sure that the world is against you.
Yeah. I'm not trying to like, the book is like, you should really see it from Holly's perspective, but it did help me like reading this book to try and think of it that way. And like Holly is a more fleshed out character than I realized the first time I went through the book. And it's little moments like that kind of give you an insight into what's going on with her.
So the next page after Lucy stomps upstairs and starts talking with Skull has, if we're looking at things from the point of view that Ellen has made here, of Skull being Lucy's inner monologue, we have the saddest part of the whole book, basically, where he says, I know what it's like. Everyone hates me too.
Oh, Lucy.
And she doesn't even address that. She just immediately changes the subject and is like, how are you here? It's the middle of the day.
Yeah, let's talk about world building. Skull.
Yeah, and it's so terrible, and I'm 100% sure that is exactly how she's feeling.
Yeah.
And it's just sad. I want to give her a hug.
Yeah. All of this stuff with Skull is so good too.
Yes, this is a great conversation.
Yeah, they do talk a little bit of world building, which feels retconny and whatever and hand wavy.
It does. It did a little. Although I do like how he's just like, it's the glass. Nothing special.
He's like, I don't know,
me,
man.
Yeah.
It's like it just works. I don't care.
But then Skull starts talking about how bad Lucy is at her job, which everybody loves. And then she's like, why don't you ever tell me anything about you? What's your name? Why are you here? Why are you different? And that I love, that they get around to this. Why are you different? Because why is Lucy different? We don't get answers about that either.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that they're both kind of mirroring each other in their mysteries.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, he says to her, you should understand what it's like, you of all people, Lucy, to be in two worlds at once. It's not easy.
Yeah.
When she's like, well, why are you so different? He says, the voice was a trifle smug, but I want to come back. That's the difference.
And that's all we ever get about not only Skull, but like why a type 3 is a type 3.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so interesting. Because, especially in this conversation, because it kind of implies that just when he's there, that he that's what he's saying. I want to come back now and chat. He's not necessarily saying, I saw the light at the end of the tunnel and turned around by choice.
Oh, that's how I took it.
No. I think he does mean it both ways, but that's not what this conversation is.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I think I only saw it the second way, is what I mean.
Yeah, and so that's, I don't know.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
As much as I do wish we got more information about type 3s in general, I do think it's kind of perfect that we just that this is it. This is what we get.
It reminds me of, there's a thing in Buddhism, I don't know if you've ever heard of this, called bodisattvas.
I have not.
A bodhisattva is exactly this thing. So like in Buddhism, your goal is to like, you realize that you don't actually exist as like a consciousness or whatever. Like there's no soul, there's no essential you. You're just a bunch of like sensations and thoughts and whatever, and that there's nothing basically there. And once you realize that and you die, then you don't go through the whole thing of being reborn over and over and over again, because you've kind of like unwound everything about you that there is to experience by realizing that you're not really there. So like that's enlightenment. That's what enlightenment is in Buddhism. And that's what nirvana is ceasing to exist. So a bodhisattva is a person who gets right up to that point of like really understanding that, and they would cease to have more lives. When they die, they won't come back anymore, but they stop at that point and turn around and try to like help everyone else get to the end goal before them. So they're like a benevolent person who like, you kind of exist eternally and like try to help everybody else gain enlightenment. It's like a supernatural kind of angel type thing. That's not quite right, but this was like, it's very funny to think of Skull as a bodhisattva because it's like such a, I don't know, it's like an archangel or something. He's such a little asshole.
Right.
But it's like, it is kind of the thing that he's saying is like, I saw what was out there and I said no.
Yeah.
I kind of love that idea.
It is interesting. If you were dying in the problem world, would you choose to come back? Would you want to go or would you want to die? This is an intense question. Sorry.
No, I know myself well enough to... I know that I would probably... So I don't feel like the other ghosts want to come back. I feel like they're trapped by some kind of...
If you had nothing keeping you trapped here, if you're...
But I would. I feel like that's how I would be.
You would be a malicious ghost?
Yeah, I would be ensnared by some like personal scenario that was important to me, but ultimately meaningless. And I would be trapped in some meaningless cycle. I would not have the wherewithal to do what Skull did.
So my first thought was I would definitely choose to come back in the hopes that I could read all my books that I haven't gotten to yet. But then does that make my books my source? Like, am I trapped here by the books?
Oh, could you read a book if it's your source?
Well,
do you know it via like some kind of osmosis?
Yeah, I don't know. But like, I wouldn't be able to read the books anyways. Well, unless I was a poltergeist.
Yeah, because you'd have to turn the pages, right?
Right. I guess a lot of the ghosts, maybe this is just in the show for looks, there always seems to be a kind of a wind. So I guess if you practiced, then you'd have a lot of time.
If you could get the book open. Getting it open in the first place would be the hard part.
Yeah, but then like you'd have to, the precise of just turning one page with your ghost wind. It'd be interesting. But I have always said that I would always choose immortality because I want to know. You know, I don't want to not know, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So if I had any chance to choose it, I would. Interesting.
Because I would think that whatever is next is better or at least different.
Yeah, but I don't like change, my friend. I don't want different. Anyways, so then there's a doorbell ring. So Lucy has to end the conversation with Skull to make sure that Lockwood doesn't try to answer the door. But she does pause. Yeah, of course. But she does pause as she's leaving and genuinely says thank you to the Skull. And I love that so much because he did actually kind of give her some truthful answers about himself. Not like the whole truth, obviously. And I think like at the beginning of the conversation, he was ready to just needle the shit out of her and immediately was on board with her distracting conversation. Mm-hmm. So I think this is kind of the beginning of the two of them being friends. And
this is a real friends conversation.
Yeah, it's
he's there for her.
He's there for her, and he did not double down on making fun of her. You know, because he could have just kept on talking about Lockwood and Holly. But he was like, "Oh, you want a distraction? All right, let's do it."
I think it's what you said too, that like maybe Skull never lies. Like he does tell her the truth about what he thinks about all of those relationships, but
anyways, so then Barnes is at the door, obviously. George makes Lockwood promise not to get out of bed. Lockwood does promise, and then immediately breaks
breaks the promise.
Which, like, is never addressed.
I know.
In a book that is largely about... And, like, just a couple pages ago, he made Lucy promise not to do something for her safety. And then... I want to slap him.
Yeah, it's
like,
he's being a hypocrite for sure, but it's like you said, it's all about avoidance. Like, work is his way to cope.
Sure, but I hate hypocrites more than anything.
Yeah.
So
I think you're supposed to notice this.
Yeah, I'm very angry at him here.
I do like Barnes comes in and he's like, I didn't know you guys had a carpet.
Oh, yeah.
What a shitty thing to say. Yeah, so he comes in and he's not happy to be here, but he is here because Mrs. Snowbum has told him what to do, which I find fascinating. This rich lady is connected to the Orpheus Society, who are a group of important people vis-a-vis the problem, whatever. Mm-hmm. But this is really interesting to me that, like, and I guess this isn't that unusual, but like in a major city that you have very, very rich people who can just call up the police and be like, do this. And then they go do it. I've always fascinating.
That what she actually did was talk to somebody at Fitz or Rotwell, maybe Fitz and Rotwell themselves. And they talked to Deeprek about getting Lockwood involved.
100%. Well, he name drops. He said, I just had Mrs. Fiona Wintergarden on the phone, a very influential lady. It's hard for me to believe, but she's seemingly delighted after the job you did. And she requested, and he emphasized the word glaring around as if daring us to contradict him, that I employ your services for the Chelsea outbreak.
I completely missed that somehow. I didn't realize she actually just called up Barnes. That's fucking wild.
Okay. Yeah, so like this is a world where that kind of thing can happen. Not that it can't happen in our world, but like it's just interesting who's in charge here.
Yeah. Do you think, like, Barnes is so upset about having to come and get them here?
Yeah, he's not happy.
Do you think later on when they solve this pretty much right away, that he is upset with himself?
I'm trying to remember. He definitely pivots to take the credit. But my memory of that is to cover for the kids, it feels like.
Yeah, because there's Rotwell stuff involved.
Right, yeah. He's trying to protect them in ways that they don't totally understand. Because he tells them, don't do this, they go do it. And then the papers are like, you solved it. And he's like, I sure did. Which feels shitty, but it's like, I think he's doing it for a good reason. That's how I remember everything. But I don't remember if he has like...
But like apart from the political
embarrassment
stuff,
or like animus towards them to be like, oh my God, you guys were right. And I didn't realize it.
I mean, after the end of this book, I don't think we see Barnes until the end of book 4 when he is again helping them cover or advising them to lie.
I would say that Barnes might be at the height of his power in the book series right now, actually.
But he can't do anything. He can't solve it.
Exactly. Yeah. And he's being ordered around by a person who's not involved in ghost busting, who's just a rich lady. So like that is, but I do think he is at the height of his powers right now.
Yeah.
Because he only becomes less powerful as the books go on.
Well, I mean, I think after book 5, I think he's good.
Yeah. Okay. That's true.
Underneath all the crap, I do think Barnes is a good guy who would rather save lives than not.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do just wonder if he reflects back on this at all later, since Lockwood & Co. do solve the problem relatively quickly.
He definitely doesn't want them involved right now. He thinks this is a waste of time.
Yeah, 100%. He thinks they are going to bring nothing, which again, just feels like random added tension that the book doesn't need. And that doesn't make much sense because Barnes knows that they do a good job.
Mm-hmm.
On weird cases. He knows they do a good job on weird ones, like The Mirror and Coombe Carey. Like, those were weird things that needed different sort of investigating.
I think the other thing that you can see right here is that Barnes is not at his best. He's, like, exhausted and is very scared, and he is not composed. Like, when Lockwood does come down and they start to actually talk, he's like rubbing his eyes all the time.
Yeah.
and his nails are all bitten down to the quick and things like that. But yeah, he tells Lockwood it's like it's the end of the world when he asks him how bad it is. So that's pretty bad.
Yeah. And that's the end of chapter 13, which we recorded for 44 minutes. This bodes well.
But listen, we had to get all that hockey stuff that's in that chapter.
You don't understand how long it's been bothering me, so.
I'm here for it. I like it. In chapter 14, Barnes shows Lockwood how to play hockey. In chapter 14, Barnes shows Lockwood and co. the Chelsea outbreak map. Then George and Lucy consult Flo Bones.
Everyone's favorite. Yay, Flo. The chapter art is a bunch of like garbage signage about
From the
I guess where the, well, it says agents keep out, which.
But it has like a placard. If you look at the bottom of it, it has like a stick that you would put a placard on,
but like
at a protest.
And it all looks like it's on top of a sewer grate.
Right. Yeah.
Or something. So
there's like protests all around the Chelsea, like central place where DPRAC is set up. And I take this to be like protester garbage.
But what does agents keep out mean?
Like the protester, the ghost cult people are like, the agents are causing the problem by provoking the ghosts.
I guess.
If we would just embrace the ghosts, everything would be fine. Like that's their position.
It just seems like a weird sign. Like it doesn't make sense from either perspective is all I'm saying. Anyways, they all head down to like the headquarters of where Barnes and DPRAC are holding court, you know?
Yeah, it's like ground zero.
Yeah, ground zero. There we go. Yeah. Lucy does take a moment to be mean about sensitives.
I love it. The tall willowy trees queued up. Yeah.
And then there's this great, wonderful, like very Stroud bit where he's just talking. He's just like describing the bit. And without making a joke, he does say that the rapier dealers, Mullet and Sons, are in the barber shop. Fucking amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
I was like, is that on purpose? It has
must
to be. Right? Yeah.
Even if we've previously heard mention of them, which I do not remember, and Mullet was their name then, he like put them in the barber shop.
Yeah. Yeah. It also says like suited adult DPRAC workers rushing back and forth like they actually did something for a living beyond letting children enter a psychically ravaged area of London on their behalf. So that's good. Pretty good stuff.
And
there's just several pages of like describing the scene. There's no dialogue. There's just like setting up what this area is like.
I just want to say that quite literally when I've been in the office at work near the end of the day and I didn't want to start a new thing, I've absolutely just picked up a folder and walked around.
I'm definitely working, guys.
It's great. People think you're doing something.
But I appreciate all this description. It really like sets a mood without telling you, like it's showing and not telling, that classic advice. But it's doing it in a really evocative ways and like showing the diversity of London in a lot of ways. Like there's a lot of different factions here. Mm-hmm. It's a very like busy, lively scene. It feels very real to me. Like it's easy to believe in this.
Yeah. They're eventually shown around by a dude named Dobbs, who then brings them to Barnes.
I feel like this would be Sergeant Wade in the show.
Yeah. And when they're in talking to Barnes and getting some information, George spots a map with a bunch of pins in it. Mm-hmm. And they get color coding on the pins, and it's just sort of about like where type 1s have been, where type 2s have been, where people have been attacked, and where people have died. And there have been like 23, 26?
23, yeah, something like that.
One of those deaths, mostly of agents, I believe.
Yeah. So just kids.
Yeah.
It's fine.
They get to talking about this fair that Fitz and Rotwell are going to put on.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that there's going to be a grand procession from the Fitz tomb to the Rotwell one. Now, I don't know about you. But the parades that I have been to don't normally use dead bodies as beginning and ending markers.
The markers.
Especially when they're trying to distract people from how many ghosts there are around. You know, like that is real weird. That's real weird.
It is weird.
And I get that they live in a weird world.
I don't think I realized that it went to the Rotwell tomb. I don't think I realized that.
From the Fitz to the Rotwell one.
Yeah.
What? Who? Why? I mean, I guess they're all just so messed up. Like their view of the world is so askew. They're like, yeah, to honor the agencies.
It makes sense that those two people would have like important monuments, you know, to them.
Monuments? Yeah, but this is their tomb. This is where they put their bodies.
It makes sense to me that their remains would be there too, though, and all of that. That makes sense to me in this world because they're like super secure and blah 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 blah. So like, yeah, I don't know, that makes sense to me that they're monuments. It is weird to have the parade go from one to the other. It makes me wonder if this has happened before.
Oh yeah, and they've got like a parade route.
Yeah, like this is the normal.
Probably when they died.
Oh yeah.
So then they get back onto topic, and Barnes is sort of talking about how, you know, it's a cluster, and they figure that the center of it would be where the problem is, and they found the center, and just nothing's there. It's just a chip shop.
Mm-hmm.
And George, very obvious, is like, that's obviously not the center. And Barnes is like, oh, so you know where it actually is? And George says, not yet.
They followed the Fitz manual, right? And then it didn't work out. And George is like doing the Sherlock Holmes thing of like, well, if we have, you know, done all of our deduction and we didn't get the answer, then a less likely reason must be the case. So we just have to go with a wilder hypothesis.
I don't see how it didn't occur to somebody else what occurs to George. That like the rivers, they're upsetting where the center would be.
Yeah, well, yeah, he hasn't figured that part out yet. But I think it's because of the Fitz manual way of thinking. It's the inside the box mentality.
I guess,
you know?
But they all know about rivers and moving water.
Mm-hmm. I feel like what makes what's actually happening so clever is that it's like a counter. It's like when the, you know, like thriller stories of when like the cops are the bad guys, mm-hmm. And they know how cops think, so they're able to like strategize against that and stuff like that.
Right.
That's what this feels like.
That Rotwell was maybe.
Yeah, like he knew,
yeah.
Oh, this is their blind spot. And so like I'll be able to exploit that.
Yeah, that's fair.
But George is like, you know, an outsider in the way that he thinks. That's why he got kicked out of Fitz. And so he's able to figure it out.
So then Lockwood decides he wants to go into the exclusion zone and take a look around and see what it's like. And George wants to go investigate something else. And so then Lucy has to decide where she's going to go. And she's like, I could go, George, unless Lockwood needs me. And Lockwood just says, nope.
Yeah. And then Lockwood's like, nah, I don't want you around. Go with George. I'll see you back home. And then he just leaves before they can say anything.
Terrible.
And it really hurts her. I think that he is also hurting her. This was my read on it. He can't protect her, like you said, and so he feels like he can't protect anyone, and that caring for them puts them in danger. Mm-hmm. But I also feel like he is hurting her because it hurts him, if that makes sense. So he's like in a punishment mode right now. Like, I failed. Right. And I feel sorry for myself. I feel bad for myself. And pushing her away, that feels bad and makes me like, that's good that I feel bad.
I don't know about that. That feels very like maybe somebody on this podcast might do it.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
And that's why
I might be projecting onto Lockwood here, but
I think it's more, he is definitely hurting her on purpose, but I think it's more just to push her away. That's what I get anyways.
It's definitely that. It's definitely on the
at
page
least that. Yeah.
He wants that he feels like him caring about her puts her in danger.
Yeah, and I guess you can read further into it however you like.
The whole point of reading books is to project onto them, to learn about yourself.
The whole point, yeah.
It's not to enjoy things.
It's not for entertainment.
Not for entertainment.
No.
That's the last thing it's for.
Anyway, so George and Lucy are walking away somewhere, and Lucy doesn't know where they're going. She's just following George. And George has a couple of things here where he's like, it's not good to bottle things up. Right, Luce? And she's just like, I suppose. And they move on. And then George does this sort of really handy-dandy thing where he's talking about what type of cluster hauntings are. Like, there's 2 types. And basically, all it is Stroud saying, look how neatly I've set this all up.
Yeah.
He takes like a whole page. Yeah, no, it's good. It's really good. He's saying like, it could be like this, it could be like this, and it was like this at Coombe Hall. It's like that.
Yeah, like remember the other books, guys?
Yeah. And it's good. It makes me feel like when he started writing the series, book 3 was the goal.
Mm-hmm.
And he very neatly set it all up to get to book 3, and then books 4 and 5 are like, I'm not saying they don't fit, they obviously very much do. But like they happened afterwards because of how books 1 and 2 so cleanly feed into this.
They feel so tightly knit. I really do wonder how much he plans. Because you can even look back on like book 1 when you've read all the books and be like, oh, there's all kinds of stuff in there.
Yeah.
I don't know, though. I don't know if that's just really conscientiously like building off of what you've done or if you planned ahead.
But both are good writing, like
yes,
whether or not he did plan ahead really well, or whether or not as he was writing on, he remembered things and to weave them in and how to use them to set it up. Both are good writing. So
yeah, I think he really, really loves his worlds and his characters. That comes through in the interviews that I've seen with him.
Yeah,
he cares a lot about this stuff, and he just is a details kind of guy. So like this feels very nice, like as an escalation of like your knowledge about the world. You can really understand what George is talking about here.
Yes,
and be
exactly.
like, yeah, you can be like, oh, I see how the puzzles fit, the way that he's talking about.
And also it makes sense how George would know everything that he knows, and
right,
how he would make
went through it.
The logical conclusions that he makes that maybe Barnes or Kipps wouldn't make. Because nobody quite saw how the mirror worked the way that George and Lucy did.
Yeah, and they might not have read the diary and all of that stuff. Yeah.
So then, surprise, surprise, George is taking us to meet good old Flo. Lucy has some
Lucy
horrifically mean things to say about her. I literally underlined some of this and was like, this is unnecessary, which is a lot for me because I have never once in my life spelled unnecessary correctly. So I generally avoid spelling that word out. But
George does call Flo a queen here, though, and that's cute.
Yeah.
The unwashed queen of the river.
I remember the first time I powered through all 5 books, I got to book 5. I've talked about this, I think, when we were talking about the show. I got to book 5 and was like, oh, George and Flo, interesting. I didn't see that coming. And then when I reread book 3 later, I was like, oh, I'm dumb.
Yeah, I wonder how much George gets it. I don't know. Like the end of this chapter, I can't tell if he's being cute or is clueless.
Yeah, but that's what's great. I like that you can't tell. I like to think he's being cute, but that Lucy would never think that of him.
Right, yeah.
Right? So that's why it comes off as not that.
Yeah.
Anyways, so they go and they talk to Flo, and it is very clear that she is way nicer to George than she is to anybody else. Because he's oh, I forgot your licorice. And she's just like, I'll give you the information anyways. Which she would never say to Lockwood. Come on.
No.
Like, she made them catch a ghost for her, basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, she almost killed them.
Yeah, and with George, she's just like, you can owe me.
It's fine.
It's great.
I love that he did mean to bring it, but he accidentally ate it. Like, he just wasn't thinking about it.
And Flo is so understanding.
It's very
so
cute.
So good. But Flo does, so she gives the information about the river and stuff that we need for that part of the plot, and then she also tells us about the Winkmans. which she was, of course, our original sort of connection to the Winkmans, so it makes sense that this information would come from her.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And so we learned that Daddy Winkman, I'm so sorry.
There you go.
As I was speaking it, I was like, nope. Anyways, Papa Winkman is in jail and Child Winkman is out there being terrible. And they got to watch out for them because with court and everything, they know who Lucy is and that she was the one responsible for putting them away. Him away.
Right. Yeah.
So that's important.
Orange Julius Winkman is in jail.
Orange Julius Winkman.
Yeah, his son Leopold is the head of the crime family.
And his wife Adelaide, they have great names.
They do have good names.
Oh, I love those names.
I feel like in the show, the wife was set up to really take over. I don't think Leopold would have.
No. Yeah,
had the
they
same
did something
arc.
different with the kid.
Yeah.
Which I like and I don't like. Because I'm always here for more women. That's great. But I don't like pitting women against each other just because they're women.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. And the books do it a little bit like previously between Lucy and Kat. And I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, we'll get more of the Winkmans later. I feel like she is not even a part of the story anymore.
Not in the books. And I guess it doesn't matter what the show was going to do because it was canceled.
Yeah. Aw.
Not that I'm
terrible.
upset.
Don't have hope.
Yeah, no I don't. I don't have hope about anything. We're all going to die. Anyways.
Yeah, there is. I do love when Flo shows up, though. Like, you know, in her head, Lucy is saying all these harsh things about her and everything. Like, you know, like striding naked through a thorn bush.
It's
and
so
all
terrible.
Of this stuff.
Like, Lucy is just upset. And she is 100% in her head taking it out on Flo. Yes.
Flo does come out and be like, oh, is Lockie off with his new girl?
Right, yeah.
And then immediately, like, Lucy is triggered and being like, no, she's just a secretary. How do you even know that? And she's like, I don't need to because he just replaces women every 18 months. Like, it's a schedule. I feel like that's a gut punch for Lucy.
It's a gut punch, and it feels like I don't know what I'm trying to say here. It feels like it doesn't fit in children's books. Right?
It's
like
weird.
It feels like she's saying something completely different. I don't know. This is the one sort of bit about this whole Lucy Holly Lockwood thing that, not that I'm implying there's a love triangle. I honestly think Lockwood and Holly don't. Not ever. Like, it's all in Lucy's head.
Yeah.
And even then, even in her head, she never really gets to them being romantic. She's just like, I fucking hate Holly and I want her to go away.
I think she just feels that in Holly's presence, she's less attractive.
Yes.
Like, not that he's attracted to Holly, but that just by comparison, she's less desirable.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it, yes. But it's just so weird for Flo to bring that up here because we've never heard about, like, because George would know if there was other girls. Or if they had, like, their previous agent was a guy, right?
The one was a boy.
Yeah. So it just feels like it comes out of nowhere.
It's definitely, I think it's on purpose to hurt her. And it's just funny that it's a shot in the dark and that it lands as a bullseye. And she's totally not ready for it.
I do wonder if maybe Flo didn't actually think there was a new girl, so she didn't think it would land quite so hard.
Yeah, maybe she thought it was like a bad joke, and then it just landed perfectly.
Yeah.
And she was like, whoops.
Because she doesn't really dwell on it. They kind of move on after she's like, well, every 18 months. But again, it just doesn't feel like something true about these characters.
Yeah.
It feels like something true about if we were telling this story as adults.
So later on in the book, there's like one of my favorite interactions in the entire series happens with Flo. And I feel like the way that her trauma management thing is to, like, when she meets people, make them not like you immediately so that you control the, like, they're not going to like me. Right. Like, I'm going to be rejected. So I'm going to make it happen. It's going to be my way, basically. And I feel like that's her whole style. And so for her to like, maybe she did mean this as a joke and then it lands. She's like, well, good. Now she definitely won't like me. Like, that's good. We're not friends.
Yeah.
Anyway, she talks about the Winkman stuff. George is like, that's nice to know, but not what I want to ask.
Yeah.
And then gets into like, what is the ghost activity like on the river? Because nobody is going to think to talk to people who work on the river. Like, this is outside the Fitz manual kind of thinking.
Yes.
Like what I was talking about before.
Exactly.
She gives them the rundown of like, oh, it's really busy over here, but it's not busy over there. And even if it is more active, it's never active on the Thames because of all that flowing water. And George is like, oh, yeah. And has like a piece of the puzzle fall into place for him.
Yeah. And you know what? Here's another hypocritical moment for Lockwood here. Because this is their whole thing. They go outside the box to solve cases. You know, they work outside of the manual.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he's always done.
That's what works for them.
That's what works for them. That's how they do it. And now he's like, no, buy the manual, Lucy.
Because of Kipps.
Fucking Kipps. Let's kill Kipps. Let's kill Lockwood. Let's get rid of all the men. George can stay, I guess.
He's so messed up by Kipps being like, well, you're not a serious person. You're not part of the club. And he's like, you're right. I'm not part of the club. I'm not serious. It's like, you're throwing away your whole thing, man. Stop it.
Why do you even want to be? It's a dumb club.
Right.
You have said that. You, Lockwood, have said that it's a stupid club.
I think it's what you said. He let all these people into his heart and it messed him up. Yeah. He doesn't know what to do. He's scared.
Chapter 15. Lockwood and co. join the lead float in the Reclaim the Night parade. The chapter art is like Halloween decor. I don't fucking know what's going on here, man. Like, I get that it's spooky stuff and it's probably at the carnival. Like, there's a big spider web with spiders and some skulls and some bones, but like, it looks like it's foreshadowing for the end.
That's what I thought. Are those like the ghost bomb things?
No, I meant for the end of the book, for what Lucy finds.
Oh, right.
Lockwood comes back from exploring the Ground Zero area and says it
by himself,
right? No, Lucy. And says that it's, it's really bad. You feel like all of the stuff that you feel at a haunting, but it's kind of everywhere. And then he says how they're digging up the graveyards, they're salting and putting lavender, and they've got these new contraptions where they're like firing salt and lavender.
Yeah, somebody's doing good business off of this whole thing.
Probably, what's-his-face's kids.
It's all Rotwell invention stuff.
Yeah, the Rotwell inventions, yes. I was trying to make a joke about the iron guy from book 1.
Oh, yeah, Fairfax.
Fairfax, there we go.
I'm sure they're doing okay. Fairfax is probably doing okay.
But none of it's working, is what is the whole point. They're doing it, but it's not making a difference.
Yeah.
And then George sort of says that he's got a theory about what's going on, but he's gonna need some time. So then after that, Lockwood and Lucy kind of go back to normal for a little bit, and they just take jobs separately. They don't do anything together.
Because George is not taking any jobs at all.
Yeah, he's just researching.
Right.
And Lucy and Lockwood barely talk, basically.
I feel like it's also, it's really hard for Lucy, but I also feel like she talks about, she kind of blames it on Holly, the way that it falls out, but I mean, George is out of the equation, so like, what else are they going to do? In a small business, like, as you grow, I don't know if you've ever been part of a small team, like a small business or anything that's gotten bigger really fast, but this is the feeling that happens. I wonder if this happened to Stroud. This is kind of like what's in the back of my mind, that like, you're writing books and you're doing okay, and then like you get a hit, and all of a sudden like your team is like, making movie deals and TV deals, and like things are really moving, and it's like, wow, we're really making some money here, and we're making some moves. It feels like these are like, we should have more time, and you have less time. Like the thing starts to take over your life because it's getting bigger and bigger. And it's like a good thing. It's exciting and cool, but like at the same time, you are doing this to get the resources to like, for Lucy, this is all about like having this found family, and this is not what she wants, for them to be like busier and busier like this. But it is kind of a good thing, sort of.
Not from Lucy's perspective. Because she doesn't care if the business grows. Like, she just wants the business to stay afloat.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. I guess you can't like just stay at a low level. It just doesn't work that way. I don't know.
That's very capitalism of you.
It's just you just go out of business. Like your competitors will
I don't know.
kill you.
You can just float. You can just go and stay where you are. You don't have to grow.
Sometimes, but then, well, we'll see in the other books what happens. Like when you get on the big fish's radar, the big fish will eat you. Is what I mean. Like it's always a power struggle.
I just wrote down during all of this that it's obvious to me that like Lockwood doesn't want to watch another person that he loves dies, so he just doesn't care. You know, he's decided.
Or he's like, I don't know about not care, but like he's shutting off, he's numbing himself with work.
That's what I mean. He has decided he doesn't care.
Right.
I'm not saying he actually doesn't care.
Yeah.
So, avoidance and blah, 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 blah. And I think this is when Lucy first thinks that she could go into the room and use her talents. But she
gets the idea.
Doesn't just yet.
Mm-mm.
And then a week goes by, and I do love George work, Holly organized, and the skull made regular rude comments.
Everybody's doing their job.
Yep, love it. And then we get to the parade fair
Carnival
night, and they originally weren't going to go, but then Mrs. Winter Garden...
Right.
Shit, I don't even know anymore. Invited them to be on like the VIP float in the parade with her, which is where Fitz and Rotwell.
Lockwood wasn't going to go because they weren't going to have their own place in the procession.
Yes, they weren't going to get to walk with the other agents.
But then they were like, well, you can be in the main float. And he was like, I guess we can go.
Yeah.
Again, it shows the access that the rich people have, though. That she is just on this float. She has nothing to do with ghost busting.
Right.
And she's just on this float, and she gets to decide who's on this float. And it's like, Fitz, the most important people are there. And she's just like, yeah, plus these people that I like.
She must write a check to Fitz every year.
It's got to be huge, right? Like, I don't know why it's so crazy to me, because it's how the real world is, but like, it's just like wild.
It's wild that it's so blatant.
Yes.
Because
yeah. And the other thing that it illustrates to me, it's not about money. That what the whole rich and wealthy thing is about is a network of relationships. That's what it really is. You know, this is what really bothers Lockwood is like, we earned our place. Like you keep saying about like Barnes and stuff. Mm-hmm. Like we did good work. We deserve to be here. And we don't get to be here. And the reason they're there is because now they're in the network. That's the reason they get to be there. Not because of the good work that they do.
Yeah.
It's because of the rich people network. And like, oh, I like you. You're like my little pet agency. So I get to show you off to like my friends.
So first of all, they explore the carnival a bit. And then Lucy goes to get them all ice cream, even though it is November.
Do you know, this is like to add more time to our podcast. I used to be like an ice cream salesman, which is a weird job, but it was like a door-to-door thing. I don't know if you guys have in Canada.
I've never heard of ice cream coming like we have ice cream trucks during the summer, but that's not quite the same.
No, I wasn't an ice cream man. It was like, it's this company called Schwann's. It doesn't exist anymore. But they were like, the thing that they did was like, they would deliver ice cream to rural places, because if you live out in like a farm in the middle of nowhere, it's like an hour drive for you to go to the store. You can't really get ice cream because like it'll melt by the time you get home. And so like we would sell this really high quality ice cream to people by like in bulk, basically, to people out in the middle of nowhere. And so the point being, I would sell ice cream door to door to like farmers, and sales of ice cream were never higher than in the dead of winter.
Interesting. I mean, I get ice cream in November, December. I do. I just not usually. Well, that's not true. I was going to say not when I'm going to be outside, but I have definitely gone to get ice cream with a friend and then walked around looking at people's Christmas lights. So who am I to judge?
I don't know. It does feel like a summer carnival thing that's happening here, but it is definitely in the middle of November.
Like, why wouldn't they get hot chocolate? Like, nothing would have changed about this scene if Lucy had gone to get hot chocolate.
She doesn't even get it. So
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nothing would have changed. I don't know. She makes kind of a poke at Holly where she says, what do you want? A lentil and hummus wedge or something? And then Lucy's like, no, Holly is like, no, I'd like an ice cream. She's like, oh, I thought you were only healthy. Like, again, we don't actually get much from in Lucy's head during this. So she could be trying to be like nice, but in a kind of petulant way. Like she could have just said, do you want something else?
She says something weird, but then the book is like, it's in the North American version. It's like a soft serve swirl or something like that is what Holly asks for. And then, but in the audiobook, she says, I don't like a 99C or something. I don't know what that is.
It's, I know what it is. I've had it. It's if I'm remembering the correct thing, it's just like white vanilla soft serve ice cream with, a certain type of chocolate bar in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's delicious.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It's a flake, the chocolate bar is called?
Yes, 99 flake. That's what she says.
Delicious. I love them. Another side story. The one time I ordered one, the last time I was in England, was in Brighton, and it was just before we were getting back on a bus back to the camp we were staying at. So I got one. I gave the lady some cash. She gave me some change. I got on the bus. We drove away. She gave me more change than the cash I had given her.
Oh, no.
And so I was just looking at this change like, what? Like, and their change is slightly different than ours. Mm-hmm. So I counted it like 5 times to make sure I hadn't lost my mind. And I was like, no, she must have thought I gave her 10, but I definitely gave her 5.
Oh.
So I made money.
Stole from that lady.
I made money when getting an ice cream, and we immediately drove away before I noticed. So I was like, I feel bad, but I'm gone. So
I wouldn't feel too bad about it.
No, I don't. Like, it doesn't plague me, but I just remembered when we were talking about it here.
I do like that they talk about here how this is really interesting. And I think it's true, like a true observation by Stroud, that like the grown-ups are way more into the carnival, like rides and experiences than the children are. That just feels very real to me. Like, given the way that this world works.
Yep.
And it's really the adults and the adult factions who are having the most unease by this whole Chelsea outbreak, but it's the kids who are paying the price. I don't know. So like the grown-ups are the ones who need the psychological release, but
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. But they're like acting like kids. It's so good. Like,
it must be hard to be like, to not be able to tell when something is, like, to just have to trust the kids.
Yeah.
That there's ghosts there that will kill you.
Yeah.
So on our way to get ice cream, Lucy is rudely interrupted by Child Winkman. And George sort of shows up right beside her because he realizes that something's wrong. And that is its own kind of shittiness, just because it's not Lockwood. Like, I'm sure if this was in book 2 or something, it would have been Lockwood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I didn't think about that. You're right.
It's even possible I can see where Lockwood was the one who noticed and he sent George over.
Oh, man. That's
right?
terrible.
George is not the most observant about like human nature.
Yeah.
But anyways, that happens and Lucy is like a Child Winkman kind of hits Lucy in the chest with his cane and knocks the air out of her, which sucks and is painful. And there's like a real physical reaction when that happens, right? Like you're kind of out for a minute. Like you can't really do anything until you get your breath back.
Yeah.
And
she's doubled over. Yeah.
Yeah. And wonderfully, George trips the kid as he's walking away so that he does not get to be cool at all.
He falls over into some other people and spills their drinks and stuff, and then they beat him up. It's pretty good.
It's wonderful. Love it. Amazing, George. But then they just go back and join the others, and they don't have ice cream, and nobody asked Lucy if she's okay.
Yeah, Lucy just got hit in the stomach. That's all that happened. It really sucks.
So terrible. This would plague me forever if that had happened to me. Like, nobody cares about me, obviously.
Yeah, it's terrible. I mean, George came to
George
help,
was there, but
he didn't ask, "Are you okay?"
He didn't say, "Are you okay?" He didn't tell Lockwood what happened. Lockwood doesn't ask what happened. They're just like, "Oh, I guess we got to get our seats now. Let's go," and that's it. And Holly doesn't ask what happened. Holly doesn't ask if she's okay. Holly's the first aid attendant. You know,
right? Yeah,
it's terrible.
I do like that. Usually you would let the bad guy have the upper hand at the end of the whole thing to be add to their power. But I love how he doesn't let the bullies get away with anything, that they just
great.
Immediately get punished.
It's also just a hilarious image of this young really kid trying to be super cool and then immediately being a young kid.
It's very satisfying.
Yeah, it's so good. So then they get on the float. They say hi to Winter or whatever. And then they go to talk to Fitz and Rotwell. George immediately, without even trying to be subtle about it, asks about the Orpheus Society. And you can kind of tell that Penelope Fitz has a moment where she's like, but then she just says, yeah, you could join. You know, you're interested? Sure.
It's good, George. It's good, Penelope. There's a real chess game kind of happening there. Yeah,
and George obviously went in with a plan. He was like, she's going to be there. I'm going to ask her about it. And he told no one so that Lockwood couldn't shut him up or anything. It's perfect. And then Penelope introduces them to Sir Rupert Gale.
Yeah. And this is the old guy from the library who, that's a bit, because I'm still confused.
We're all still confused.
But this is the guy from the previous book.
Yeah, from the auction who they got into a tuffle with.
Yeah, as in tried to kill them.
Yep. And it's one of those instances where they know and he knows and he knows they know and they know he knows they know. But
they're in polite society.
But nobody's saying anything. And presumably Penelope knows that they know that they know.
Yeah, she has to.
Right? So everyone's just like, oh yeah, it's nice to meet you. But with
this is the first time we've met, for sure.
Yep.
Yeah, it's good. There's a lot of tension. I think what is significant for the first time reader here would be oh, this guy is connected with these people, and it seems to be closely connected with Penelope.
Yes. Who has
only to this point seemed pretty heroic, or at least nice. You know, there's no reason to suspect anything of Penelope until this guy. And you're like, oh man, she has a friend who's a jerk. That's too bad for her. Hope she finds out about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they make the whole thing explicit. She says, Sir Rupert is a good friend of the Fitz agency. His father helped my grandmother long ago.
Right.
He helps train the young agents in sword fighting and all other martial skills, which is what he was doing on the rooftop, trying to kill them with swords.
I want more of that story. What did his father do for her grandmother?
Yeah.
So there's a lot of parallels, of course, between Marissa's story and Lucy's story.
Mm-hmm.
And I suppose I wonder if What's-His-Face's father, I'm so great with names, folks, was the Lockwood and Rotwell was the George.
Oh, interesting.
You know?
I see what you're saying.
Anyways, I want their story, is what I'm saying. I want more.
That's interesting.
The villain origins, I want them.
Yeah. The Phantom Menace of
exactly. That almost kind of works too.
It does. Yeah. Weirdly. Yeah, but this guy, I feel like in the show, he's basically like the piratey guy.
The Golden Blade dude, yeah.
Yeah.
Which is great. I love that he doesn't get a name. I mean, in the first 2 books, he didn't have a name anyways, so.
Right.
But yeah, that's definitely supposed to be Rupert Gale.
Yeah.
But then they take their seats and the parade starts and they realize how slow it's going and how stupid it is. And how...
like every parade.
Yeah. And then they realize that there's a lot of unrest in the crowd because they're watching a parade about all the people who are failing them right now.
Right.
Who the fuck came up with this idea? Well, obviously...
Steve Rotwell.
Yeah. Yes, obviously. Sorry.
Speaking of like a Phantom Menace situation.
Yeah. As things get bad in the crowd, one of the agents on this float gets up and gets a bucket of candy and starts throwing candy at the crowd. Like
whole bucket full.
Yeah, like it's money.
Right.
But it's candy. What is who?
Do you think that's like, you know how Flo is like ideal in
I understand
licorice?
what you're saying, but no.
I don't think so either.
This just seems like Rotwell was maniacally like, why don't we treat these adults like children?
Yes. Yeah, I think that is what it is.
Like,
yeah.
Who? How? Why? Can you imagine getting pelted in the face with candy?
While you're like, stop killing our children and like
the ghost
thing.
keeping us from our homes and our businesses, right, and telling us that we're going to die without any proof of it and all these things, and then somebody chucks a sherbet lemon at your face. That's in my head because of fucking Harry Potter. Whatever. Anyways.
Well, the crowd breaks bad. What does it say? It says, then I felt a wave of cold and sudden psychic fear, and I realized the truth. People are like attacking the float.
Yeah, and they're like firing sources.
Right, they're throwing stuff up there, and ghosts are starting to come out. And
anyways, that's the end of chapter 15, and the end of our very long episode.
Yep.
Best joke. There wasn't much joke. I did like... Oh, what was that one that I underlined at the beginning? Oh, the George's lap thing. You know, was it you or Holly? But it was George. That's good. Especially because of the ambiguity of whether or not Lucy's telling the truth or just fucking with him. Love it.
The mullet thing is
the
funny.
Mullet joke. Yeah, that's good too. Especially since he plays it so straight. Like in the writing, he doesn't call attention to it at all. So good. I didn't really feel any punk rock these chapters. Everyone's a little bit too in their own heads for it.
Yeah, Lockwood's being a jerk.
But like Lockwood's being a jerk, Lucy's kind of being a jerk, Holly's kind of being a jerk, and George is just trying to figure shit out.
George does kind of like walk right up to Fitz and be like, I'm in your club, just so you know.
That's true. You know what? That's true. That's a little punk rock.
Future me's in your club.
Yeah.
Deal with it.
I know your secrets, bitch.
Right. George is always good for the punk rock moment.
It's true, because George does not care. All right. So if you out there would like to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at Lockwood Podcast, or you can follow me personally on Twitter at Inferior Caitlin.
You can send emails to us, contact at hollowgroundmedia.com, or you can go to hollowgroundmedia.com and scroll down to the bottom and fill out the form.
And remember that the best hockey romance happened in real life between the captain of the Canadian women's Olympic team and the American women's Olympic team, because they are now married, and that's fucking amazing.
Wow. I didn't know that.
I mean, previous captains. I don't think they're still captains, but yeah.
Amazing.
Yep. Women hockey players, not assholes.